Greetings, everyone. My name is Guy Dauncey. I am the co-chair of WeCan, and welcome to our first ever annual general meeting. We acknowledge that we live and work on the lands of 195 Indigenous nations all across BC, on lands that have been their home for thousands of years, on Haida Gwaii for at least 13,000 years. We are learning, and we approach our work of learning and reconciliation with much humility and respect. I'm now going to share the agenda with you, just to show you what's happening here. So we have briefly a welcome by Grand Chief Stewart Phillip, who's present with his wife Joan. We have team reports from 6 of our working teams. We have presentations from 6 member groups, and then a piece about where WeCan is going forward. Then we have presentations from 5 candidates for election, consideration of motions, if any, and a wrap up, hopefully at noon. And I'm now I want to say, we invite you to use the chat to introduce yourself, or the climate action group you work with or volunteer with, and your traditional Indigenous territory. And during the AGM, you can use the chat to share any ideas or ask questions. So now to get us rolling, briefly, I want to introduce Cynthia Barnes, a retired educator who's active with the Qathet Climate Alliance in Powell River, who will bring us a short poem. Cynthia, floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm a director with qathet Climate Alliance, and formerly we were called Climate Action Powell River Society. I had the title for this poem running through my head all morning and all night, so I've just changed it to We Can, Will, Must. Our future is bright while WeCan provides the light, making things right on this planet. Birds, insects, flowers, and bears, and we no longer lament the loss of ecosystems. Trees grow unhindered, cars are electric. Bikes are plentiful, cities are frenetic with walkers abounding, parks, gardens, forests, and woodlots cover the ground. The climate crisis abates, our children no longer wait for us to do what must be done. Bye-bye monoculture, bye-bye oil and gas, bye-bye overconsumption, bye-bye trips to Mars. Now we gaze at the stars and are grateful for this beautiful, this healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I now invite Tara Shishtarian to introduce Grand Chief Stewart Phillip.
Good morning, all, and thank you for your wonderful words, Cynthia.
Thank you.
It's our honor and pleasure as WeCan to invite and introduce and greet distinguished guests. I'm at a loss of words. Our distinguished guests, Grand Chief Stewart Phillip, who is the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and our indomitable matriarch, Joan Phillips. Grand Chief Stewart Phillip is also, I consider him an elder of elders, so my hands to you and my hands raised up to you, Joan Phillip. They have been at the helm and forefront of Indigenous rights and climate activism for decades. I call them my ultimate power couple. They are a dynamic duo, and they beautifully epitomize what the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran has said: the oak tree and cypress grow not in each other's shadows. And that beautifully encompasses their relationship. And so now I would welcome and request Grand Chief and Joan to start us in a good way. Thank you very much.
Yes, good morning. I first want to start us off in a good way. I'd like to ask our son Monty Joseph to start us off with a song. So, Lim Monty. Go ahead.
Just a quick word in regards to that song. That song is called Generations. And it reminds me of my mom's words in regards to what we don't fix now, we pass on to the next generation. And so the work that you guys do here today reverberates for those generations to come, and those younger generations that will end up having to pick up this fight in the future as well. So thank you very much. God bless. Hope you all do well. Thank you. Bye. Take your place. Love you.
List. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, you can start.
Okay.
Inspire.
Why Isquiste-Aimshon, that's my traditional name. It comes from Holowatiuk in North Vancouver. I just love it when we start off in a good way. I really want to thank the WECAN for this kind invitation to come and share with you. This work is so daunting. We've been working on this since the arrival of not non-native people, but corporations, and they're the ones that are relentlessly lobbying governments. And there's an expression in the Okanagan, it's called when people are in cahoots, they share the same mustache. Well, corporations and governments have been sharing the same mustache and have been, and it's to the detriment of all of us, the climate, the land itself. In the Okanagan, we have four main responsibilities, and two of them are to the land and to the people. And I'm just so grateful for organizations such as yourselves that take this work seriously. And we're on the brink. I'm just so disgusted with governments today, particularly Canada. Here we have laws that protect Indigenous rights in Canada. We have laws that protect the so-called environment. They require Indigenous consent, and they passed and adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And those laws are completely overrun and ignored. They've criminalized people that are defending the land, defending the people. Here you have the Canadian government subsidizing and giving away $10 billion to the oil industry. And that is just so unacceptable. So I really want to thank the We Can for standing up for the environment. And Monty's right, what we do not do, we pass on to the next generation. And unfortunately, we're going to be passing on a more degraded environment. We don't stop it now. Zimna.
Why peace naksil in our Ensilichin language, that's simply good day, my dear relatives. Esquis asiut. My name is on the wall behind us. Asiut means loon. And I just want to begin by thanking Monty for his song. Monty is one of our sons, and he's been an activist ever since he was a child with Joan and I at the history of blockades in the province of British Columbia. Monty was there and witnessed firsthand our fight to support the Haudenosaunee or the Mohawk people during the Oka crisis in 1990. Monty was at many battles for the land and the water and the people. I want to say with the greatest sincerity, it's a real honor to be asked to speak at the We Can AGM. The organization that you all support is incredibly critical to the fight that we're all engaged in. As Joan said, without question, we're on the brink. And as we sit here in Okanagan territory and look out our window, it's overcast, it's rainy, and it's unseasonably cold up here. And the snow is actually coming down the hill, which is unprecedented. At this time of year, it's much warmer under normal circumstances. And we're concerned that this cool weather will prevent a gradual snow melt. And we're going to be hit with several days of extremely hot weather, and all of that snow will melt at the same time. And we'll be back to flooding events, catastrophic landslides, and things that we witnessed last fall. Another observation we've made, just a few weeks ago, the lands in our community, the grasses and so on and so forth were incredibly short. I've never ever seen it like that. It looked like golf greens. And now the grasses and everything are over a foot high as a consequence of the rains. And that's the pattern. As we move through the rains, the fuel load on the hillsides grows at a phenomenally fast rate. The heat comes, that material dries out and forms the ignition point of the wildfires, which then goes into the forest and ladders up the trees, and the trees kindle, and we lose millions of acres of critical habitat to the wildlife. It destroys the riparian systems for wild salmon and ultimately creates catastrophic landslides. And that's the battle that we're all engaged in, is attempting to push back on the predations of industry who are responsible for this man-made climate crisis. And we need to do our utmost to serve notice on the government, on the corporations, and on the general population about the urgency of the situation that we find ourselves in the middle of. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your life's work, for your commitment to the land and the water and the people. I want to thank you for all of the activism and all of the, you know, the strategizing and things of that nature. I really want to express our gratitude to those people who take matters into their own hands and have been at intersections throughout the Lower Mainland, reminding people of the old growth forests and the desecration and destruction of the last stands of old growth forestry. As Joan mentioned, it was absolutely insidious, the Trudeau government approving the $10 billion loan guarantee for TMX. Trudeau said not too long ago there would be no more public money spent on TMX. And then they turn around and provide this loan guarantee to the major banks and other corporate interests. So it's without regard to Mr. Trudeau's a pathological liar. We all know that. And we have to do our utmost to expose these lies. I thought it would be an interesting idea if we were to take all of the imagery, all of the pictures of the wildfires, such as the incineration of Lytton and Monty Creek, the flooding events in the Fraser Valley, all of Princeton, all of those pictures, and deluge the cabinet members with those pictures on a continuous and constant basis. At the same time, I think those pictures should go to the corporations. And that campaign should be ongoing. It shouldn't be a one-off, something that we do. We should be constantly reminding them there are consequences to the decisions that they take. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of a reaction we get from plugging up their communication systems with those photographs. I want to offer a shout out to Will George from Holowatiuk. He's one of Joan's relatives, and he was recently sentenced to 28 days as a result of his activities on Burnaby Mountain. And we consider that an unduly harsh sentence. It's, you know, the racist notions of the so-called Canadian justice system are clearly evident in the court proceedings in regard to our activities. But we know that Will George will, you know, will stand up to this injustice and continue his work as he has done all his life to protect the land, to protect the inlet in the interests of his people. So again, in closing, I wish you well in your deliberations. Joan and I have 15 beautiful grandchildren, and on their behalf, we want to thank you for the amazing work that you do, and look forward to at some point seeing you face to face. I think we're going to have an interesting summer, and I look forward to the, you know, to the activities, the plans, the strategies that that you bring forward as a consequence of putting your hearts and minds together. And as Monty said, consider the interests of our future generations. Why? Lim.
Thank you. And we thank you both for your generous participation in our work and your words of encouragement, and for so many years of leadership, both for Indigenous people and for the land, the ocean, the salmon, and the planet. So now we're going to turn to a section of reporting on weekend's progress, and I'll kick this off myself with a little top-end report before we get to our teams. So, oops, went wrong one there. The climate crisis is more urgent than ever. These are all stories from within the last month. Marine life is on track for mass extinction if global warming goes unchecked. And the World Meteorological Organization said there's now a 50% probability that at least one of the next 5 years will temporarily breach the Paris Agreement threshold of 1.5 Celsius. Back in 2015, this chance was estimated at 0. Our house is truly on fire. But we are many. We have 222 member organizations, and I don't expect you to read all these names, but just glance over them to see the strength of this movement throughout British Columbia. Every one of these groups has anywhere between 10 and 1,000 people working to make a difference in the ways they can, from First Things First Okanagan, the Stand.Earth, to, you know, the Be the Change Earth Alliance, from the Capital Unitarian Universalist Congregation to Tradition Nanaimo, Climate Convergence in Metro Vancouver, Climate Hope on Cortes Island, Wild Site, Kimberley Youth Action Network, the Skeety Island Climate Change Action Group. There's so many, so much going on there. But climate solutions are everywhere. So most of these stories shared in our weekly newsletter we produce every month, every week we come up with these stories, and these are just recent ones. So the mining town of Trail in BC recently voted yes to become to 100% renewable energy by 2050. The city of Oslo has committed to reduce its climate impact by 95% by 2030. All new constructions in Montreal must now be zero emissions by 2025. The Hawaii State Legislature has voted to support the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. There's been an unprecedented clean energy spending surge of 50% in the last 5 months. The Trans-Mountain pipeline insurers are dropping like flies, thanks to persistent campaigning by groups pressuring the insurers not to cover Trans-Mountain. The winner of the European lottery recently donated over $200 million to save the Earth because he cared more about our planet than about buying a new fast car or whatever. In Denver, the electric bike rebates are making car alternatives cheaper. Other cities should listen up. In Denmark, the country is planning to build a 34 billion artificial wind energy off-island, which will produce more electricity than the entire country of Denmark needs. Hertz has announced it's ordering up to 65,000 electric vehicles from Postal for its rental program. And Mercedes has recently got a prototype that's breached the 1,000-kilometer range barrier. So, and then we have climate activism everywhere, with the campaigns to stop TMX, to hug Burnaby Mountain just last weekend, to stop the Coastal GasLink project, to stand with the Wet'suwet'en, to urge the banks to stop banking on climate chaos, to end fossil fuel subsidies, to defend BC's old-growth forests, to demand a just transition, to seek more support for active transportation, to keep Fortis BC out of our classrooms, to overhaul the BC school climate curriculum being led by teenagers from sustainability teams who are totally fed up with the way climate is dealt with in schools, to sign the Fossil Fuels Non-Proliferation Treaty. Victoria, Burnaby, Richmond, all recently signed, and Vancouver. And to promote Project Drawdown, have public education understanding how the solutions are possible. To promote a vision of clean, sustainable communities. This came from the Wilderness Committee just this morning. To tell the world that clean LNG is a dirty lie, projected onto the conference center in downtown Vancouver just last week. To install community-wide heat pumps. The Holowatiuk Climate Action Programme is one of the most comprehensive of any community in British Columbia. To elect climate champions this October, something that we are active on ourselves, so that people who want to run for office have our support and we have a chance of getting them elected. We have passion, we have determination, we have hope. This is Leonor Humchit, who's the Climate Action Coordinator for the Holowatiuk. So now I want to hand over to our working teams. I'll stop sharing and allow, I believe, Eric Doherty to share what our climate solutions team has been doing. There we go. You're on, Eric. Eric, you need to, you're giving us a lot of amusement, Eric, but you're coming over like a hyperlinked chipmunk. So I got to do the voiceover for Eric. Eric, if you can mute Eric's audio. So one of the things our climate solutions team has been doing is a 4-part webinar series, which is both having the best discussions, linking the evidence together, mobilizing coordinated support. And I'll trust Sebastian or Eric to advance the slides because I don't have control. There we go. So the first of our webinars was on great public transit, urban and rural, with Coopy, Judith Wilson, Eric Doherty, and Tara House. And we have a petition associated with this, asking for a province-wide public bus service so that we have no longer to fear missing and murdered Aboriginal women, people struggling to get around. Our second webinar was on great walking, cycling and rolling to show that this is such an essential climate solution. And currently the budget is less than 1% of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure's budget. We want to increase that 5-fold to $100 million a year from $20 million a year. These slides are all up now on Vimeo and on YouTube for you to watch these. Our third webinar coming up in 10 days' time is on complete communities with Christine Lintodd and Todd Lindman. showing how if we can design our communities that we don't need to have cars to get around in the first place, by having more, dense, affordable housing and the missing middle of housing, so we can get around on foot, by bicycle, by bus. We won't need to own a car at all. And the fourth webinar coming up in June is on electric vehicles, car sharing and urban freight. So again, if you live in a city, you don't need to own a car. If you can have a part of a car share cooperative, a lot of freight can be delivered by bicycle, with bicycle cargo bikes. And then we have electric vehicles gradually, making rapid progress, not only into cars, but into trucking as well. So this is our two petitions for a world-class BC-wide bus service and for an increased active transportation budget in BC. You will find these in our weekly newsletter. And what else has Eric got lined up in this presentation? I don't know what he prepared. There we go. We have these resources on our website, and moving forward this fall, we are planning to support the campaign that Weekend's doing to get candidates elected to municipal government, and specifically to help the candidates so they know what are the top 10 issues if they are campaigning as a climate champion for municipal election this October. So you can talk confidently on the doorstep. You can talk confidently in the all candidates meetings. You're really on top of what it means to be a climate action champion in local government or in a regional district or as a school board director. So thank you, Eric. I'm sorry your chipmunk didn't amuse us for longer. I now invite Sebastian, Sadja to report on the work of our communications team.
Great, thanks, Guy. So hopefully folks can see the slide here. So the communications team, this is sort of a back-end team that sort of seeks to support the other teams that are out there. So this is going to be a bit of a briefer report. We used to be called the tech team, and that's because we set up a lot of the technical infrastructure that's necessary to run Weekend. So all that sort of back-end goodness with the databases, social media stuff, email clients, all that stuff. But now we're just called the communications team because we've shifted our focus mainly to do the communications work of Weekend. So this team has sort of set up this the website, which you can see at westcoastclimateaction.ca. You can see a lot of the different work that the various teams have put on by going to the website. Lots of resources, lots of webinars. You can also access our newsletter and sign up for our newsletter if you're not already a subscriber. And also, if your organization isn't a member of Weekend yet, you can also join on the website. So the website is westcoastclimateaction.ca. This team has also set up our social media. So you can find us as the West Coast Climate Action Network on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, and you can also find us on Instagram. So we're active on all three platforms. And one of our big pieces that we do through the communications team here is the newsletter. People might have noticed that we're on issue 52, and we've actually been toying around with using MailChimp for the past 4 or 5 issues. There's a lot of discussion about the best way to present this information to our members. And we've been talking about doing some kind of a survey or feedback to see what the best way is to get that information to folks. But if you're somebody who's interested in social media, interested in communications, just want to encourage you to get involved with this team. We're probably going to be finding a new day for it because right now it's just during the day and it's not super convenient for a lot of people. But if you're interested in getting involved with the social media, the communications, if you like to write, if you like to do graphics, just give me an email and we'll try and set up a good time for everybody to meet and take some next steps. So hopefully people are psyched about communications and get involved. Please email me. All right, back to you, Guy.
Thank you, Sebastian. I'd now like to invite Katherine Maas to introduce the work of our Indigenous engagement team.
Good morning, everybody. As Guy said, I'm the team leader for Weekend's Indigenous engagement team. And basically what that means is I hold the container for all the wonderful team members who are really doing most of the work. Our mission is to bring an Indigenous perspective and seek Indigenous engagement in all of Weekend's activities. We're striving to build high quality trust relationships with First Nations and Indigenous leaders and with leaders, especially in leaders of Indigenous climate change initiatives all over the province. And we're doing this in order to support and advance the understanding of Indigenous climate initiatives throughout the province. To this end, we're currently working on 3 projects. We are developing and delivering Indigenous Climate Initiative webinar series in partnership with Raven Trust. We are also in the process of creating a dashboard to access a database of Indigenous climate action projects all over the province. And finally, we work continuously to increase Indigenous participation in WeCan as members on our teams and on our board. So let me begin by telling you a little bit about our webinar series. We planned 4 webinars, 2 of which have already been delivered. The first was delivered in November last year and featured Reuben George, Chief Roland Wilson, and Smogelgam of the Wet'suwet'en, and the topic was busting the fossil fuel corridor. We had great interest and attendance in that. And the second one we offered just this past January. It was an Indigenous perspective on climate action, focusing on community solutions. And we had guests from the Holowatiuk Nation who talked about the conversion that they're doing from furnaces to heat pumps in their community. And the Gitchan Nation talked to us about Indigenous knowledge about ecosystem restoration. We have 2 more webinars under development, one on geothermal and/or solar projects that are being done in Indigenous communities. And we're also planning one on land-based issues, including food security, food harvesting, forestry, land development, and things of that nature. We're also working on a climate action dashboard project, and the project's goal is to map every Indigenous climate action initiative that's taking place in British Columbia, including renewable energy systems, educational initiatives, resistance to oil and gas pipelines, that anything that crosses Indigenous territories. We already have a small team of volunteers and an IT lead setting the dashboard up, and we're now looking for an outreach and communications coordinator to contact key people in all these initiatives and invite them to participate in the development of the dashboard. The job description has been developed and it's being circulated to universities and other organizations that have a population of people with the right skills. And obviously we're intending to hire a First Nations, Inuit, or Métis person into this job. The project is a part-time project and should take about 4 months to complete once we've hired that person. Finally, the most challenging part of our mandate is to increase Indigenous participation. We want more members, more Indigenous members. We want our teams to have more members, Indigenous members on them. We're always looking for Indigenous people on our board and on the advisory panel, which we're developing. This is something that we recognize can't be done on as a fast track project, because the people that we're targeting are busy people. It has to be seen as a long-term objective, but we firmly believe that if we do this right, it will build a stronger WeCan. Thank you.
Thank you, Katherine. So now I'd like to invite Casey Stein to report on the work of our local government team. Casey.
Thank you, Guy. Just sharing my screen really quickly. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. So the local government team, formerly called the Municipal and Rural Engagement Team, and we decided to shorten the name, has been operating primarily on municipal government. So what is our mandate or our main focus? It's really to help climate champions. We need more climate champions everywhere in order to address the climate crisis. And we also need people who are climate champions to be getting into office in lower or really municipal level offices, including City Hall, but also school boards, regional councils. Those are just a few examples. In addition, we have been working to help our members navigate local government. So a lot of people pay more attention to the federal and provincial level politics, but really local and municipal governments are really important. Usually they control or influence over half of all emissions, which is really significant. And that's part of why we're trying to put a bigger focus on this. So we do have some resources also that we've been working on to help our members navigate local government, whether that's within or trying to lobby, and we will mention those soon. So over the past 4 months, we delivered a series of roundtables. We had 4 separate webinars. And if you missed any of the webinars and you want to see it, that's okay. We have them all on our website. So our first webinar.
Casey, sorry to jump in, but you're just on the first slide. I don't know if you're intending to advance the slides.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm okay, that's strange. On the
Now we
is
see
it moving
roundtable.
now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sorry, I was using the presenter view and I guess it's not carrying over. The slides aren't moving now.
They're moving now.
Okay, that's strange. Okay, sorry about that. Well, it looks like it's working now. If it's not moving again, please let me know. Okay, so our first webinar was on how climate groups can influence local government. So this is how to lobby local officials, and also how to work with officials and staff on initiatives, and really just getting climate champions and our members to connect with each other in order to better.
Your slides are not rolling again. You're still on the one
Okay.
series.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why this is going on. You can see it now?
That's how climate groups. Go on to the next one.
Okay. You see it?
That's recruiting climate champions. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to know where you're at.
Okay, great. Okay, so we, as I said, we need more climate champions. So our second webinar was on recruiting climate champions. So this was to hear how people got involved and really started the process of becoming climate champions. All of our presenters won campaigns and are current climate champions in office or former. And they included Megan Curran, who is a councillor for the District of North Vancouver, Nicole Charlwood, who is a councillor for the City of Nelson, and Ned Taylor, who is a councillor for the District of Saanich, who was elected at the age of 19. And it was moderated by Andrea Reimer, a 3-term councillor of the City of Vancouver. And recognizing I have to go back to the first slide and just share the presenters very briefly. I don't want those to be missed. Were Ben Gesselbracht from Nanaimo City Council, Alex Lindstone, the Executive Director of Climate Caucus, and Sebastian Sadja of Force of Nature, moderated by Dr. Deb Morrison, a North Pender Island trustee. Okay, so the third tab, please let me know if it's not moved.
That's good.
Is okay, great. Perspectives from the inside. So this is really the inside scoop from people who have been on city council and what you should do once you're elected. So this was really electeds sharing the challenges they faced, how they adapted, and the importance of local government. So our presenters included Laura DuPont, a councillor for the city of Port Coquitlam, Alison Gu, a Burnaby city councillor, and Rick Logtenberg, a Nelson councillor and the founder of Climate Caucus. It was moderated by Nadine Nakagawa, a New Westminster city councillor and organizer of the Feminist Campaign School. So our final webinar was on municipal campaigning. This was strategies to win a campaign, and once you run, how to make sure that you win. Our presenters were Trudy Goals of the Feminist Campaign School and Dave Mills, an experienced activist and contributor to Carbon Sense. It was moderated by Basil Langevin, who will be running in the 2022 local elections as a climate champion. So our roundtables attracted a lot of attention. We had around 450 people register. So the climate movement's building. So we also have some resources to share. All of them are on our website. Here are a few of them. These are some useful handbooks. One of them is WeCan's own local campaign process guide, and others include Climate Caucus's infiltration manual and new councillor manual, which are really useful, and also some others. So I encourage you to look at our website to take a look at those. So what's next for the local government team? Well, we're going to be working on climate champion database expansion. Okay, yeah, stay on this slide for just a second. And this is basically connecting with climate champion candidates and helping them connect with each other. And we're helping member groups support their climate champions, whether that's getting them elected if they're in office or engagement in other ways. So our climate champion registry is on our website. And remember, elections are only half the battle. We also have to help them once they get into office. So we're helping connect these officials with each other once they get elected. And we want them to be able to coordinate. I know one thing is our opposition, the fossil fuel movement, is very organized. And I think that's one of WeCan's biggest objectives, is to work on organizing and getting everybody on the same page. We also have an election countdown, which you can see here on our website as well for the local government elections this year. So if you are interested, we encourage you to join us. You can find out how to get involved with the team on our website. And we have former counselors, candidates, young people all over it, and we're always looking for more. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Casey. So to wrap up, I want to return to Sebastian for a report, slightly longer report on our members team.
Great. So as Guy mentioned, this is going to be a bit of a longer presentation, about 8 or 10 minutes. This is for the members team. So the members team is tasked with sort of recruiting and sort of staying in contact with our different member groups and understanding who our members are and what our members need. So our big project recently has been a survey that we've sent out to all of our member groups. And we're just going to be talking sort of about what the groups told us, what they want, what they are, sort of what their identity is, and sort of their identity is our identity, right, as a network. So we asked WeCan member groups who they were, and this is what they told us. Yeah. So the first thing that we asked is sort of what types of groups are members in our organization. So we found that actually 2% are have some kind of government affiliation. So there's a couple of school districts who have joined, for instance. We have about 6% registered charities, about 20% are registered nonprofits. And as you might expect, the vast majority, 70%, are sort of local community action groups without sort of any legal identity, other than just being sort of groups of citizens trying to better the world and trying to confront the climate crisis. We also asked our member groups sort of if they're staffed or volunteered. We found that about 13% of our groups are staffed and about 87% are volunteer. I think that's pretty much to be expected. And I think that those staff numbers are a bit higher than maybe I expected, but I think it's the case where we have a lot of these larger groups who have joined us who have maybe 1 or 2 staff at head office, but in their own chapters sort of operate on a full volunteer basis. So I'm sure I'm not telling anybody anything new by saying the climate movement is powered by volunteers. All of you nice folks who have taken some time out of your Saturday to come to this AGM and do work in your communities. So we also asked sort of where are our member groups. So if you look at this map, you can see that we're definitely clustered in the great sort of Vancouver Island, especially the southern end, the lower mainland, the Okanagan. Fortunately, we just don't have as many members as we'd like in the north. And I think that this is sort of one of the big focuses that this team, the members team, is going to be looking at going forward, initiatives to make sure that we're getting proper representation of groups around the province. So if you know any groups from up north or from the interior who haven't joined WeCan yet, send them an email, give them a nudge, give them a phone call, and sort of tell them about us. And hopefully we can get the entire province united. So we tried to figure out how many people are supporting the climate movement in BC. This is a very hard number to figure out. We asked member groups how many supporters they have. Member groups took that question in different ways. Some of them listed sort of their newspaper or newsletter subscribers. Some smaller community groups listed how many people sort of are on their email lists. And when we sort of added this all up, we got 382,000, over 382,000. So it's obvious that there's a lot of people in BC who are passionate about climate action and want to get things done. The next thing that we sort of try to inquire about is sort of the web presence of member groups. So what are our member groups doing online? What's their presence? What's their reach? We asked them sort of, do they have a Facebook page, a website, et cetera, et cetera. So we found that Facebook is sort of the organizing platform. Most groups have Facebook pages. So you can see here a Facebook post from the Okanagan Climate Hub as an example. And then following that, we have websites as the most common form. I'm actually kind of surprised that more groups have websites than have Twitter, but kind of an interesting little factoid here. And we can see this sort of a piece of a website from the Collaboration for Advanced Landscape Architecture, sort of hosted as a subpage on the UBC website. Twitter has about 31% of our member groups have Twitter. And you can see here the Vancouver Green Faith, which is a Lower Mainland group that unites people from different faiths who have a passion for climate. They're a bit of a newer Twitter account. So if you that sounds interesting to you, give them a follow. Yeah, we have many of our groups on Twitter. And then Instagram here, we've got a post from For Her Kids North Shore, BC, a little bit of a fun post about a pine marmot, or martin, sorry. So not all the posts that our member groups do are necessarily directly climate related. Some of them are just fun, and that's great. And then finally, we found that only about 11% use other forms of social media, such as, for instance, TikTok. And if you were to go to this TikTok from Stand.Earth, you'd hear some interesting music, and I would be feeling a bit older than I usually feel when confronted with TikTok. It's a very interesting medium, but some people work in it, and it's super cool. So that's sort of the spread that our member groups have in terms of their activity on social media. So we also asked sort of how many followers do you have on social media? So when we talked about Facebook, we found that our groups that are part of our network here have a total of about 243,000 followers on Facebook. That's a huge number, right? And it really shows that Facebook is a platform that has a lot of reach, and a lot of groups use it as their primary organizing vector. We also talked about Twitter, and in terms of Twitter followers, our groups have about 112,000 in total. And then finally with Instagram coming in third here with 67,000, almost 68,000 followers through the various Instagram accounts that member groups use. So the next thing that we asked is sort of what kinds of activities are our members focused on? So this was, for those that did the survey, you were going through a lot of different hashtags and selecting different hashtags to let us know sort of what your organization is up to. The first question that we asked, and this is an interesting one, is sort of what the scope of your organization's climate action is. So we found that at the low end here, the least common type of activity was actually federal, which I found quite interesting. And then it sort of, from this sort of big federal scope, it kind of goes down, and then we see that provincial, regional come later, and then it goes down to municipal and community being actually the most engaged in scope of climate action. And that's certainly good, considering the fact that we have an election here in October. October 15th is going to be a big one. Hopefully we can get climate champions elected across the province. And hopefully we can connect those municipal groups to municipal candidates to make sure that there's mutual support, not only for the election, but after the election, to make sure that climate action actually does happen. So that was an interesting thing about the scope of the actions that member groups are engaged in. And then we talked about, we asked about what kind of tactics does your group use? So this word cloud sort of represents the sort of how many groups said that they use each specific action. And you can see that sort of the lower, the less common tactics were directly engaging with political parties at about 22%, direct action at about 25%, and petitions at about 27%. The two biggest were public education at 74% and social media at 68%. So a lot of our groups are engaged in the act of making sure that folks know about the climate crisis and sort of how they can take action. So it's interesting to know that these are the different kind of tactics that folks are using. We also talked about what kind of climate action each group is engaged in. So we had a number of different big areas, and I'm not going to break down each area individually because there's a lot of information, but that information will very shortly be on our website. So right now we have a website where you can go and you can see where the groups that are member groups are located. But as soon as we have all this data ported over, we'll be able to search through these groups in terms of what areas they're active in, and also even what more specific areas. So each of these tags actually breaks down into about 8 to 14 tags per category. So you'll be able to see, you know, hey, can I find a group that's involved with mass timber in Greater Victoria, right? So we're really proud of the sort of database that we've put together. That's going to be super useful. But just to talk about these tags, it's really interesting that climate adaptation and food are sort of the two lowest areas of concern for, maybe not concern, but lowest areas of activity for the groups that are in our network. Meanwhile, fossil fuels, renewable energy, and nature are some of the biggest concerns for our member groups. What we also asked in the survey is sort of like, what do you want as a member of We Can? What do you want us to do for you? So when we asked that question, the sort of lowest tier of responses were, you know, how to run a great Zoom meeting, how to write op-eds, how to find new board members. Sort of the medium responses here were how to raise funds, how to engage with members, opportunities to have regular Zoom get to know you meetings with other climate groups. The sort of more asked for ones were how to make better use of social media, connecting back to that importance of social media, having access to good public speakers, and how to increase your group's membership. But the number one thing that groups said that they wanted from We Can, and this is really the whole reason for our existence, is the opportunity to collaborate with other climate groups and organizations. So recall I was talking about the different tagging that we have going on. As we develop all of that information, all those databases, we'll be able to connect groups that are working in similar areas, whether that means similar areas by location, similar areas by topic, or any combination of those two, right? So this is going to be a big focus of this team, the members team going forward. It's making sure we have those opportunities for climate groups and organizations to collaborate. And I think Guy's going to have a bit of a surprise about that later. At the end, we asked sort of if there's any other comments, and a lot of you took that opportunity to thank us, thanking us for our work and such. But really, we wanted to thank you all for being members of We Can and for helping We Can be what it is. And hopefully we have lots of good actions in the decades to come as we fight the climate crisis. So with that, I will pass it back to Guy.
Thank you, Sebastian. Sebastian is both our secretary on the board and our network coordinator. So now we move to the next phase of our AGM with 6 presentations by our member organizations. Since we have 222 members, we could have given each organization 8 seconds each, but we thought it'd be a little bit complicated. So we invited 6 to give us a short 5-minute presentation, starting off with Arden Henley from the Green Technology Education Center. Arden.
Well, good morning. Bonjour, ça va? Respected elders and valued We Can colleagues. My intention is to very briefly introduce you to GTEC, we call it, or the Green Technology Education Center. I'm just...
I've had the same problem, yes. How to advance the slides.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm trying to get to my toolbar, but
persist, we'll be patient, you'll get there. Or you can turn it, you can go put your cursor on the left-hand slide and do it that way. It's cheaper. It's a play from the start.
Got it. So I'm Arden Henley. I'm the executive director of GTEC, and I'm speaking to you from the traditional and ancestral lands of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam peoples in Vancouver, BC. GTEC, our goal is to respond to the climate crisis using the powerful tools of education. I might add that our idea about education, it combines community development with education. The work we've done so far has included a project that we called the Neighborhood Environment Education Project, which brought 14 of Vancouver's climate crisis-oriented organizations, from eco-justice through hub cycling to the Environmental Youth Alliance, in partnership with neighborhood houses, to the community. So it was a series of community education events involving a wide range of climate crisis-oriented organizations. We were interrupted in this project by the COVID pandemic and shifted to creating a core group of climate crisis focused experts and individuals surrounded by a larger support team of subject matter experts to produce an influential report called Rebuilding BC that saw us have the opportunity to present to BC's cabinet on a couple of occasions. We also went on to develop a online project in partnership with 2 high schools called Gen Z Goes Electric, which was aimed, as the title suggests, at educating young people, the next generation of drivers, about electric vehicles. And finally, the North Star Project, again, a pandemic and online program that linked interested youth with employment opportunities in the green technology sector. Our current focus. Okay, now moving the slides. I see. Our current focus is the development of what we're calling the Climate Crisis Education Center, and including, as you'll see in the slide, the Green Cafe. And we're negotiating with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to make use of the former Emily Carr University building, or a part of it, on Granville Island, a very high traffic, publicly accessible environment, with the goal of bringing Climate Crisis Education Center to the street, and also providing us all with a home in the Vancouver area that from which we can meet and engage with the public. So the goal is to create a scalable, multifaceted resource that will serve the people of the False Creek area and the surrounding city of Vancouver community in response to the climate crisis. So people know where to go to find help, to find education, and to find like-minded others. So the Climate Crisis Education Center will offer a supportive environment to discuss new ideas, learn new skills, and generate innovative solutions. Some of the unique features include the direct engagement with community, the focus on public education, and the inclusion of arts and culture. We'd love you to be included in this project, and there are a number of different ways. Principally, we intend in the Climate Crisis Center Education Center to make what we call the guest spot available. So all of your organizations will be able to join us for a month in a featured place in the environment to meet people, to share your materials, and to put on events, seminars, etc. So if you're interested in taking up a guest spot, we'd love to hear from you. And you can contact us through our website up on the screen there. Finally, we have a free online accessible publication that is increasingly the organ of our community in developing its and expressing its ideas. We'd love you to subscribe, and here's how to do it. And also we'd love you to contribute. So that's a very brief introduction to GTEC. And I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to share this exciting organization with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Arden. And I know everyone is looking forward to walking through the doors of your Climate Crisis Education Centre. I'd now like to invite Jack Anderson to speak for the qathet Climate Alliance in Powell River. Jack, the floor is yours. Didum. Do we still have Jack with us? Sebastian, can you see, is Jack still with us?
I think
Yes,
he's on
yeah.
mute.
Yeah, I'm just gonna just
Hi, I'm sorry, I didn't unmute.
There we go.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. My name is Jack Anderson, and I am coming to you from the traditional and stolen lands of the Tla'amin First Nation. Our community has been called Powell River for about 100 years now, but we're going through a transition in the name that I want to tell you about because it's very important. A couple of years ago, our regional board was gifted a name from the Tla'amin First Nation, qathet, which means working together. And so they changed the name of our regional district to the qathet Regional District. So this created, this is a wonderful move, but it created some confusion, because you change the name of a municipality or whatever, and it's got to, has its, growing pains. So now we're in the process because the Tla'amin Nation has requested the city of Powell River to change its name. It was named after Israel Powell, who was one of the architects of residential schools in BC back in the early 1900s. And they told us that it causes them pain to live somewhere that's named after someone with that history. So we're going through a process. We don't know how long it's going to take. I was at a meeting a couple of nights ago with a couple hundred people expressing their views about this name change. But to me, it's a golden opportunity for our community, not only to move forward in reconciliation, but also to move forward in our reconciliation with the planet and really finding the means to fight climate change, restore the environment, and approach a more sustainable future. But I want to tell you mostly about qathet Climate Alliance. So first, a little bit of history. We started right before the Paris Agreement, when 350.org called on community groups to organize demonstrations ahead of the Paris conference to encourage our leaders to take real action at the Paris Agreement. So there was about 100 of us, and we walked across the town of Powell River along the shoreline, and ended up at the historic Patricia Movie Theater, which was the first movie theater north of Vancouver. Anyway, we had and we were joined there by another 150 people. So there were 250 people that day who watched the Avi Lewis, Naomi Klein movie, This Changes Everything. And then we had a discussion afterwards, and it was obvious that people wanted to continue this effort. So we started having meetings, and we became a registered society a few months later. And that society was called Climate Action Powell River. We changed our name in this last year to qathet Climate Alliance. So there's some confusion there, as there will be, but this has been a worthwhile experience, this name change, and we look forward to it having real positive results in our community. So anyway, we formed this organization. We had a board of directors. We had those members who were with us from the beginning and in the end when we created the first website. And we did all the things you would expect a climate organization to do. We were trying to educate the public, keep the issue in front of the public as much as possible. We would have a booth that we would set up at every event that we could. We created a newsletter. We started making allies in the community with every organization that we could to spread our base. We have met once a week for 7 years. We missed a few days in there, but that's the commitment of our board. And so we had speaker series, several speakers. Guy here was the first speaker in our series, and that was just after he published his book, Journey to the Future, which if you haven't read is, I will plug the book right now because it's really a good read. We had a wildfire expert, Ed Strusik, who came. We had a man from Tree Canada who is in charge of their sequestration efforts. Frederick Vroom is his name. And all these speakers came, and we took them to the high school and to other schools, and so we've worked hard to educate the public and keep the issues in front of the public. And also along the way, we did our EV promotion right from the beginning. And now I don't know, but Powell River looks like it has one of the highest per capita EV populations that I've seen anywhere. So that's just one thing. The other thing a big project for us was we commissioned Cora Hallsworth Consulting to do an ecological footprint study for our community. And we had to raise the money, and it went on. We got an intern from the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, a student for 3 months to collect data for this project. And this project kind of comes from Jenny Moore at BCIT and her team, which originated with William Reese at UBC. He's one of the first people to use that term, the ecological footprint. So anyway, the result of that was this 40-page report here with lots of graphs and data breaking down the footprint of our community so that we had a better idea. Before that, we had the province's inventory, the community energy and emissions inventory, which wasn't as thorough. So we have now this thorough picture of what our challenge is. Our annual emissions are 192,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. We know that our ecological footprint is so many thousand global hectares of usable space, which is 4 times larger than the actual area that we live on. So we have all of this footprint information that we can call on to present to the public and also to show that we know what we're actually up against in terms of our community's need for change.
Jack, if you can wind up soon, we're getting behind on time here. Thanks.
Sorry. Okay. The last thing I want to show you is just this. This was our strategy for 3 years, our roadmap, where we use the word ROAD as an acronym for reduce, offset, adapt, and drawdown. And those were our 4 strategic areas and still pretty much are. In the offset section, we wanted our community to be carbon neutral. We called on our local government to consider this and to offset our footprints down to 0 as we were going ahead. And we wanted to do that because we wanted our community to be a model of carbon neutrality and try to lead other communities in the province to do the same. So, that's a high goal. And it's you know, we think it becomes more important all the time as the crisis deepens, that we take this kind of real action to reduce emissions wherever we can reduce those emissions. So then along comes We Can. And we thought this is the perfect opportunity for us to work with other communities in the province and really push for emission reduction and sustainable living and ecological justice, reconciliation, the whole intersectionality of all of the serious issues that we're facing. We Can look like the perfect vehicle, and this meeting today is just reinforcing that idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I am conscious that we are eating up our time here. Anyway, next I want to introduce Dave Shannon from the Terrace chapter of the Council of Canadians. Dave, floor is yours.
It's going to be Marianne, his wife.
Hi, Marianne, that's great.
But he'll answer all the hard questions if there's any. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we live and work is the traditional Tsimshian territory of the Kitsum-Kalem Nation and the Kitsalis Nation. The Terrace chapter of the Council of Canadians is about 6 years old now. I am secretary of the Terrace chapter. My husband, Dave, heads our energy and climate campaign, and I also work on climate issues. Along with our members' active participation, including letter writing, rallies, signing petitions, meeting with our government representatives, and hosting the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, the following is a summary of our energy and climate activities. Our energy campaign is quite active and started with involvement in the Pacific Northwest LNG proposal, or Patronus, on Laylu Island. At the Salmon Nation Summit in Prince Rupert, we signed the Laylu Island Declaration. Members attended the pole raising on Laylu Island also. That project has been canceled. The crude oil tanker moratorium, Bill C-48, saw our energy and climate campaign working along with stakeholders and government on the wording of Bill C-48. Then we made a presentation in front of the Senate Special Standing Transport Committee when they traveled to Terrace. Bill C-48 was passed by the Trudeau government. Site C, as part of our water campaign, one of our members traveled to take part in Paddle for the Peace, and another member has worked diligently to make sure this area of the coast never has any fish farms. We are concerned about glyphosate and especially how it affects our waters, and our members work on that issue also. Presently, we are very fortunate to be working with Eco-Justice Environmental Law Charity on the proposed Cedar LNG project as stakeholders. In this second phase, expert reports have been submitted on the environment, emissions, and marine aspects of the LNG proposal. I also submitted a 7-page letter of comment. Our work can be found on the EPIC Cedar LNG site. All our submissions are there. In the future, Eco-Justice has agreed to represent us again as stakeholders in the Kasai Lissom's LNG proposal. This proposed project would be almost as large as LNG Canada in Kitimat, which is currently under construction and is the largest project in Canada. We thank Eco-Justice for helping us through the processes and providing the professional experts whose work is absolutely crucial to understanding the deficiencies and gaps in the proposals. Our energy campaign has worked closely over the years with Douglas Channel Watch, where Dave intervened approximately 7 times in the Northern Gateway hearings. Dave was fortunate to learn so much through participation in the hearings. We appreciate having this opportunity to let you know the work we are doing on climate issues in the North. There are currently 4 LNG projects active up here. So there are many concerns. And I want to thank you for this wonderful group coming together for the work and making our planet more healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And we're very conscious that so many of our groups are down south, and we need to do whatever we can to help you up there, especially with this big LNG challenge, because clean LNG is a dirty lie.
Thank you.
Next, I want to invite Douglas Courtemanche from the Doctors for Planetary Health on the West Coast. Douglas, the floor is yours. And you may be muted. In fact, you probably are muted. Can you unmute, Douglas?
Okay, there, I'm unmuted.
There we go.
It's just like too many buttons all at once here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, just going to minimize all your charming faces. So thank you for the opportunity for presenting on behalf of our group. We're called Doctors for Planetary Health West Coast. We're on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And we are a group that started in February of 2020 by 3 founding members, Doctors Sada, Thayer, and Lau, born out of Extinction Rebellion healthcare. Our total membership is about 122 individuals now. We're a little bit less structured and more into the NVDA than the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. We're not a hierarchical group. We include other healthcare professions, and our core group meets on Zoom for about 2 hours once a week to discuss what we're up to and figure out what we're going to do. We represent healthcare, intersectionality. We like to remind the public that climate activists aren't just students and unemployed people, but that all walks of life are worried about this. And our niche is that climate crisis is a health crisis. So we actually see patients with climate crisis related health care and mental health care issues. And we're also concerned about the carbon footprint of healthcare, which if healthcare was a country, it would be the 5th largest contributor to climate crisis. And we also feel we can use our social capital as physicians in terms of providing education. So what do? We have educational events. We have been able to get a few meetings with government. We support other groups, and we lend our healthcare voice. So for example, May 2021, there was a project called For Our Kids, where 2 of our members, Dr. Sada and Dr. Thayer, facilitated a meeting with a bunch of mums and their kids from their group with the Attorney General and Minister for Housing, David Eby. On the 4th of November last year, we held a permitted rally on the lawn of the legislature in Victoria. We had breakfast with Adam Olsen. We were introduced in the legislature. We did our march around the lawn with our group, a land acknowledgement, and a series of speeches about issues related to the climate crisis and what people need to do. We went to the 12th of March 2022 Ministry of Just Transition rally at the Vancouver Public Library, put on by 350.org. That was an amazing event that they staged. And when we go to these rallies, we take our banner, we wear our white coats. We want to be recognized as clinicians and physicians that we're supporting this. And we think that that hopefully adds to some credibility and maybe increases public interest. Participated on 24th of March, Stand.Earth's protest about Lululemon and their designed in Vancouver, made with coal for the Olympic outfits. We have a Code Red for British Columbia document, which is our long ask of the provincial government, which was officially released on the 7th of April. We want the government to declare a climate and ecological emergency, develop and implement a transformative energy plan to take action on climate change, restore nature, create broad transformative change, focus on human well-being. We really want a well-being society and ensure just transition. And that document is available for anyone who wants it to download. It's on our website. On World Health Day, we managed to get a 3-person meeting with Minister George Heyman. We presented the long ask. We discussed the health impacts of the climate crisis in BC. We compared the climate crisis data with the opioid crisis and the COVID crisis data. And the climate crisis rate of death in the heat wave was higher than either of the other two for the time frame that it happened. We explained the impact of a 1.5 degrees C temperature rise in human terms. And we asked that the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change start to integrate the perspective on the environment with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. Members also participated in the action on the 7th against the RBC, protesting the bank's funding of Coastal GasLink. None of our members glued themselves to banks. We were at the 9th of April Slay with Tooth Stop the TMX protest at the Art Gallery. Again, we have our sign and our slogan and our uniforms so that people will recognize who we are. And we were part of Hug the Mountain. We got Station 6 right at the gate where the injunction is. But nobody came to hassle us for standing there, which was, I guess, a good thing. At the sort of a little more professional level, I guess, there is now a move for planetary health units. So on the 16th of April last year, UBC launched a planetary health lab within the Faculty of Medicine, which is run by Dr. Andrea McNeil, who's a surgical oncologist, who has a master's in the area of planetary health from the London School of Economics. Vancouver Coastal Health and VGH posted for a planetary health regional medical director, and Dr. Rashmi Chadha has now assumed that position with funding. And BC Cancer announced on World Health Day that they now have a planetary health unit run by Dr. Maura Brown, who's a radiologist. And they have, there are 6 cancer agencies in the province, and they're all linked in this one, with this one unit, and they're actively supported administratively through the PHSA. We provide education and awareness with a view to giving people information about climate change, what it is, providing some models about how to think about it, and then giving them ideas of what they can do. And we go around and we do rounds for different groups within medicine. So we're giving them ideas of what they can do personally, what they can do professionally, what they can do within their organizations and societies, and then what they can do politically. And so we're involved with a lot of different groups in terms of presentations and education and awareness. We all took, I'm going to see if this will work. Go, yes. We took the planetary health pledge.
As a physician,
As a surgeon,
as a nurse practitioner, take the planetary health pledge.
Work to protect the health of people,
Their communities.
and the planet.
I pledge to maintain
the utmost respect for human life
and the diversity of life on Earth.
And for the natural systems
Which support all life.
I advocate
for equity and justice
By actively addressing environmental, social, and structural determinants of health.
envisioning a transition to a society
that places the well-being
Of all persons.
in balance with nature.
at its heart.
I pledge to address
The climate and ecological crisis
in my actions at home, in my community,
And in my profession.
to protect the planet
and all its life forms for current and future generations.
The Planetary Health Pledge is available on our website as well, and you can take out the health profession and you can put in whoever you are and whatever you do. It's an adaptation from the article in the Lancet that Courtney Howard was one of the authors on. She's a doc up in the Yukon. So that's how you can find us and contact us and see what we're up to.
My
Thank
goodness,
you for the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Douglas. Do you want to share your camera so we can see our face? If we meet you on the street, we can greet you.
Sure, sorry, there I am.
There you go. And if you stop sharing, we can see that fully, right?
Yes.
There we go. Thanks. I'm sure you got us all tearing up. That's powerful thing you put together there. Thank you for your work. Next, I want to introduce Ben Simoni with the Youth Climate Corps. Ben, the floor is yours. And remember to unmute.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Is it
You're
slides?
not on full view. You want to go on full view.
Sorry. I'm not.
Go
Okay.
back up to the first slide and then double click on it. Try that.
It's not really responding too well to me right now.
I can see that, yeah.
All right, let's just not use it. Hey folks, my name's Ben. I am joining you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Snakes, the Silks, and the Ktunaxa peoples. And I'd like to thank WeCan and everybody else who's participating today for hosting this. It's really inspiring to see the great action that folks are taking, and yeah, from all sorts of different angles, doctors, chiefs. Yeah, it's really, really cool to see. So I work with Youth Climate Corps. We've been operating in the Columbia Basin in partnership with WildSite since 2020. Our mission is to provide dignified and meaningful paid work and training to young people in community-led climate action projects. So what that looks like is normally around 4 to 6 months of training in community projects that are contribute to climate action. So one of the core elements of Youth Climate Corps is that we are not determining what communities are going to be what projects are going to be run. Each community is going to determine that on their own, and that's a key project concept of that. So projects that have been done so far have been in the Kootenays, especially wildfire mitigation, because that is deemed as an extreme hazard for communities out there. And as part of doing wildfire mitigation, the participants receive certifications, training, and after the program, many of them continue on working either in the industry, nonprofits, or different. We've had alumni go to COP26, work for regional government. So it's really inspiring. That's the thing that kind of keeps me going, is seeing what the alumni do afterwards. It's really a key part of this program is providing agency and civic duty, sense of place to these alumni, which is pretty inspiring. I should mention also the term youth is varies depending on who you talk to. In our line of work, it's generally around 17 to 30, and the crew are normally between, the largest crew we've had is 14, and the smallest is around 4. So it depends on the community and interest, but we've seen, especially this year, the interest is tremendous from youth who want to work in climate action. They want to be paid to do this work in climate action, because youth are key stakeholders in the futures of our communities, and they need to be paid for the important work that they do. Some other examples of projects that are happening, energy retrofits, especially revolving around the building envelope, energy efficiency. There's been research done by participants into wildfire, water, quality and quantity, and permaculture, food security. So that's been our focus so far, and we've received a tremendous amount of feedback from the organizations that we partner with and the youth, and we're looking to expand this program across BC, which is really exciting. So the next couple months, we will be developing a framework, a toolbox, and building partnerships with municipalities, organizations, and youth across BC to expand this program to new regions in the province. So that's one reason that I'm excited to be here today. I'll put my email in the link at the end, and I'd like to invite anybody who works with an organization or is just personally interested in the program to please reach out. And our goal is to provide capacity and be a multiplier for community climate action projects. So if you think about a project that you're involved with and you think, okay, how could a team of, let's say 10 young people elevate this project to the next level, then this is who we want to be partnering with to make this happen. So our toolbox will be providing kinds of logistical frameworks in terms of work plans, templates, but then we'll also include a curriculum for leadership development and capacity building, because in all communities we need that young climate leadership, and it's one of the most effective ways of fostering that is showing agency and showing that things can really change. So that's really, yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and we really approach our work with an abundance mindset, and seeing all the amazing work that folks have been doing here is really inspiring and exciting to see what this program will bring in the future. So
great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. That's just fabulous. And that's, remember, we have 222 member organizations. That was just 6. There's another 216 organizations that could have given a 5-minute presentation, and just this incredible wealth of material. So now we need to return to our legal.
Sorry, 1 second. We have one more presentation, right?
I'm sorry, Kate Holowatiuk. I'm Kate, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. I'm so conscious of the time slipping by. Nearly forgot you. Kate, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Guy. And I'll try to be conscious of the time here today. I'm Kate Holowatiuk, member of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. I wear a bunch of different hats, but I'm always wearing my worker hat. You know, I come to all of this with a labor perspective. I sit on, we've just become a committee, which is great, at the BC Federation of Labor. We were just a working group, not just, but now we have the ability to make recommendations. That just happened recently. I live and work on the stolen lands known as Victoria, so the Coast Salish, Lekwungen speaking Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And I'm really, really close down here in the Inner Harbor at Laurel Point. And, you know, when I go and do my daily walk, and I always pause, you know, what an important area, and just pause and take a look, and for trade, and how important this harbor would have been, or has been for time immemorial. So I'm here to talk about delivering community power. It's a little pun, you know, the post office, postal workers, we're in every community from coast to coast to coast, a huge infrastructure, 6,200 post offices, and work locations of various sizes, from little, you know, shacks out people's doorsteps to giant processing plants in larger cities. We have the largest delivery fleet in the country, 13,000 vehicles that are owned by Canada Post, and another 6,000 that are rural carriers. They use their own vehicles, but that contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. So as I'm listening to everybody else's presentations and the work that's being done, the pillars of this campaign really touch on a lot of these things. Transportation, you know, the Postal Service in other countries, they actually have combined public transport with the delivery of mail and parcels. I think about the care economy, you know, the doctors that are signing on to this, and how our Postal Service could act as a part of that care economy, you know, a senior check-in program. Can we keep people in their houses longer? During our crises last year, where we were seeing, you know, both through COVID and through the heat dome, and that, you know, providing a check-in service, you know, this is something, again, not plucked out of the air. It has existed here in Canada, letter carrier alert program, and it exists in other countries. You know, just that contribution to civil society, that's really what we're about. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers has amazing policies, you know, in our constitution. But what we need is amazing things in our collective agreement as well. And really, we want these things put on the bargaining table. So one of the other pillars, another thing mentioned a few times today, is banking. A public postal bank did exist in Canada until the late 60s. There's some really good examples throughout the world. France, La Poste, and New Zealand with their Kiwi Bank are some really, really good examples. And, you know, I won't spend too much time explaining why. I think everybody understands why, but where those investments are going, you know, if we had a public postal bank, we would have a say in where those investments are going, and they, you know, would not be going into fossil fuels. If we think about that infrastructure, if we think about those 6,000 locations, every one of them could have, you know, solar panels on their roofs. Every one of them could be retrofitted, you know, to their heating and cooling systems. But every one of those places could also provide a charging station, both for our vehicle fleet and for the public. Now, something else mentioned and something that's so important is food security. You know, the 100-mile diet is no longer a fad, and it's something that we really need to start thinking about. Again, could the Postal Service play a role in that, in that food security? We need a better developed Nutrition North program. That was something that was gutted during the Harper years, and they're now looking, you know, to the Amazons and Walmarts of the world to provide food to the North. But, you know, as we know, that's not nutritious nor secure. So as I mentioned briefly, you know, bargaining demands. So yes, we are a union. Yes, we go to the bargaining table. We'll be going again here in a year and a half. And, you know, things like our working conditions, yes, we want to see those things there. But in our previous round, we put things like postal banking on the bargaining table. We're saying we care about this, and we want it enshrined in our collective agreements. We also do lots of education. That's sort of something that's a passion of mine, is that union education. I'm a rabble rouser. You know, I started as a steward and you know, leaning on the boss a lot, but you know, all roads lead back to education and organizing. We recently teamed up with 350.org, and we've developed a climate change course that's right now, it was piloted here in the Pacific. It was an amazing success. It's being translated so we can roll it out across the country. So that's very excited to get our members, you know, to make that connection, you know, that I'm making here. And then organizing, you know, supporting our climate champions around elections. For example, this past federal election, we created a pledge for candidates to sign. And I think we had of the 338 ridings, we had a pledger in over 300 of those ridings. So an amazing success there. And one of the other things we do is we ask municipalities, organizations such as this, to pass resolutions of support for this campaign. To date, we have about 1,200 municipalities that have passed resolutions for this for this campaign in its entirety. And we work with, you know, I could go on and on, I won't, but I'll do some name dropping. You know, Avi Lewis has been a supporter from the beginning of this. If some of you may remember the LEAP manifesto about 5 or 6 years ago. So we were part of that founding organization. Seth Klein, in his most recent book, A Good War, he mentions the postal workers and this campaign. And then David Suzuki has been an amazing support for this. So I have an action for you today. I don't know if we have time, but if we can just drop the website in the comments, deliveringcommunitypower.ca. There's a bunch of different things there, information, resources, and then there's a take action button. On Earth Day, Canada Post made some announcements. And much like other corporations, they're very little, very tiny baby steps that they were making. This petition is going directly to one of the senior vice presidents. So we're hoping to flood her inbox with support. And then if you are part of another organization, under the resources, there's a resolution there that you can bring to your board and get passed. And lastly, I'll just say, I could talk forever about this. I'm mindful of the time, but I won't. I'm open to having a further conversation with anybody on the call here today. You know, and what this could look like. How can we reimagine the post office in your community through the creation of community hubs and such. So I'll put my personal email in the chat, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting. And you know, you've all given me some energy. You know, it's hard, as you all know, and I'm seeing some hope in a lot of what's been talked about here today. So thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kate. We're all in this together, so we're right behind you. Yeah. So now we're in an AGM here, so we have some legal things to cover. One is our treasurer's report. So I'd like to introduce one of our board directors and treasurer, Lily Mah Sen, to give us our treasurer's report. Thanks, Lily.
Hi, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Everyone?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so my challenge is to make the financial report fascinating and exciting, which is not a big, easy thing to do. So I thought maybe I'll give you a quiz at the end to see if you remember the numbers. Or I could stick in a little humdinger like, by the way, the return on our investment in big oil was $25,000 this year, but I see Guy already grimacing at that. So no, we're not going to go there. I think I'll just stick to the actuals. Okay. So I have some numbers to start off with, both big and small. 1 billion, 35 million, 17.8 billion, and $2,510. Now, what are they representing? The 1 billion is what the BC provincial budget for 2022 was to give to new climate spending over the next 3 years to clean BC. 35 million went to the Centre for Innovation and Clean Energy in partnership with Shell Canada to focus on new technologies like carbon capture, carbon hydrogen, biofuel, synthetic fuel, all things that we are really questioning about their feasibility, whether they reduce GHGs in the long run, how they would scale it up, and whether it would actually reduce greenhouse gas. And Shell Oil, which went into the partnership with the BC government, provided 10 million of that to the Innovation Fund. But last year, their CEO, Ben Van Beurden, said it was a momentous year for their profits, and they made $17.8 billion. And of course, the $2,510 is what we spent last year on weekends. Oh, and now I'm not moving. Shoot. I'm having problems.
I can see that. Yeah, roll it forward. We'll all
Just scroll down. Just use the rolling wheel.
Okay, so really quickly, this is our income from last year. We actually didn't start off until later in the year. Our first assembly was in March. We elected a new board and our budget was in August. So this is really 6 months. And if you see, our total income was $35,000. And out of that, we started off with a startup of $756. We had a GoFundMe campaign, which brought in $6,000. We asked for people to give us directly. We made $18,658. And a donor gave a match up to $10,000 for the amount fundraised. Oops. And I'm back into this. Okay, can we see this?
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of our expenses, like I said, we only spent $2,509, and it's very small amounts, including startup, communications, or insurance, and some costs for our AGM, our assembly, the webinar, membership, and so on. We did get over $5,000 in kind, which was really, really important. Now, for our budget in 2022, we now are going to the full year. We are anticipating to be able to work with $135,500 with a fundraising target of $87,000. And the major expenses we will have are communications, and you heard from our team on their ideas of staffing. Last year, we had wanted to start hiring at least one person in part-time capacity to help us with the administration. We didn't feel comfortable doing it until we actually fundraised some money. This year, we really want to be able to hire full-time staff capacity. And we have the programming expenses, which you heard from our teams on what they're planning to do. So my last slide is a thank you slide, because without all these people that helped us, we would not have been able to get started and off the ground. In terms of the financial donors, 134 people contributed $35,000. We had in-kind donations, over $6,000 in free services, including getting our website up and running, computer tech services, free programs, free apps, and last of all, the volunteers. So I added up what we've done, and there are about 50 core volunteers in WeCan, over 900 volunteer hours. And if we were to pay them all at $30 an hour, it would be $27,000 of free labor. So that's the end of my snapshot. You can see the full thing with all the bells and whistles and the numbers in a spreadsheet. And I think Sebastian's put that into the chat for you to see. And I think I'd like to hand it back to Guy to see about accepting my financial report.
Thanks, Lily. That's great. So in terms of accepting this, I would like a motion from one of our current board members. Katherine is proposing we accept the report. Is someone volunteering to second that motion that we accept this report? Sebastian, can you let me know if someone is seconding it? I can't see, or put it in the chat. One of our
I'll second it.
Seconded by Sebastian. All board members present in favor, please raise your hand or put it in the chat or any objections. And quick check on this one in the chat. Yes, all good to go. So we will accept your report. Thank you, Lily. And I'm going to share the screen now and continue with a little bit of forward movement on our financial thing and where we go from here before we get to the elections. So moving forward, we'll be welcoming our new board after the elections. We'll have continued work in our teams, continued work towards the October municipal elections, supporting climate champions as they run for election, building our financial foundations. And on Wednesday, June 15th, we want to have BC's first Climate Action Provincial Assembly. I'm going to just go right ahead to that and then come back. So we want to create a structure that enables all of our groups to meet together more regularly, share what they're doing, and see how we can help each other in a coordinated way. We don't know how it's going to work yet. It's an experiment. We've set the date, we set the time, and together we'll make it happen. And we'll get the details of the links and stuff out to you later. Now, just moving back financially, the ICBC gas rebate checks will be arriving in everyone's door soon. So if you ride a bike, use transit, or drive an EV and don't need it because you're not driving a car, we would love it if you could make that donation to WeCan. And I'll be doing that personally when ours arrives. And we'll have a thing on the website to enable you to do that. Secondly, we want to launch a new program called 100 Friends of WeCan. But if 100 of us swim together, we can become the financial wind beneath WeCan's wings. And I'll stop sharing there. With every year that the climate crisis grows stronger, our commitment to halt it must be stronger too. We founded WeCan a year ago to unite the passion of tens of thousands of climate activists. We now have 222 member organizations, and we need to sustain ourselves financially. Would you be willing to put your purse behind your passion by becoming a founder member of 100 Friends of WeCan, pledging a steady monthly donation? If there are 100 of us holding hands together, we can become the financial wind between WeCan's wings. And I'll personally be kicking that off and joining that in with a monthly donation. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. We're now on to the election process. And I'd like to, we have 5 candidates standing for election. Nadia Joe, Whelm King, Eric Minty, Michael Abrasimov-Penna, who can't be here because he's got a family thing happening, and Denis Hughes. Before we start, Nadia Joe is bringing a full Indigenous background, and we have 2 seats reserved on our board for people who bring an Indigenous background. So Nadia has agreed to take one of those seats, meaning we have 2 vacancies on our board and a possible 3rd vacancy if one of our directors lets us know if she wants to continue or not. We haven't heard from her for quite a while. So I'm going to hand over to Alison, or actually maybe hand over to Nadia first. So Nadia, you'd like to introduce yourself because you're not up for election, but we'd like to say hello to us all. Nadia.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, Guy. And thank you, Lily, for that fascinating overview of the financial situation. It reminds me of a time when my elders and my leaders before me, in 1973, presented a proposal to PR Trudeau, which formed the basis for land claims negotiations, negotiation of self-government agreements. And we became the first Indigenous nation to effectively settle those within Canada. And they started with $25,000. So it's a wonderful reminder of what a committed group of people with minimal resources can do. Hentla Yerakshin Wenwen and Jawet and Squashly Letgo. In my mother's language of the Nkakatma peoples, I carry my grandmother's name, which is Hletko, which translates to rain falling on water. And it is a name I received in ceremony following several years of work to support her nation to advance Indigenous water rights. In my father's language, which is the community I grew up in, Danke Kakala Uye, Kajatan Iche, Amanda Ketko Uye, Tadake Uye, Klugataan Iche. Kwitsi, Nje. So I currently live in Kwitsi, Katzie First Nation traditional territory here in the Fraser Valley in the Lower Mainland. I also work full-time as UBC's, one half of UBC's newly established climate emergency team. UBC had declared a climate emergency in 2019, and following a comprehensive consultation with students, faculty, staff, and their community, they had identified a number of strategic priorities. So I'm one of the current team members helping them to advance their priorities on that. And it's just a real privilege and a pleasure to be amongst you, because this work is not simply about climate leadership. This is a love story, and I'm happy to join you on it. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. So Alison, if you'd like to take over to introduce the election process, let me go to the 4 candidates.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Alison Bodine. I'm a weekend director on the board, as well as an organizer with Climate Convergence. Really happy to be with you here this morning and to elect some new members to our board. We're very excited to welcome new members to our board. And Nadia, very excited to work with you as well. So as of 3 minutes from now, every member organization of We Can will have received an email to your contact email that you gave to us. It will come from Election Buddy via the West Coast Climate Action Network, and it will include in it an access code and a password, as well as a link. You use the access code and the password. Once you enter the website, you will be presented with a simple ballot. As Guy explained, we have 2 open positions now, a possible 3rd. So you will be able to choose between our 4 director candidates in order to be able to make an informed decision about who to vote for. We are going to invite the directors that are running to say a few comments. I will start that off with the information about Michael Abrosimov Penner, which you could also get by clicking this button. Michael is an 18-year-old climate activist and part of many climate organizations who says that he has free time on his hands and is great with lots of technical things like Zoom, email software, and IT stuff, as he described it. So that is Michael. He's excited to be involved with We Can, and does also come from the interior of BC. So you'll be able to get some more information about Michael and others. And please do let me know if you have any questions once you get to the election page. I'll put the information and some short instructions in the chat. And I hope that you all will participate in voting for our new directors, because it'd be great to have your support for our new board. Thank you.
Great. So Whelm, would you like to give a pitch and tell us who you are? Whelm King.
Yeah, sure. My name is Whelm. I live in Nanaimo. I grew up in Vancouver. I currently reside on the traditional territories of this Nanaimo. I'm a longtime entrepreneur and business person. I have started multiple businesses or managed multiple businesses in a number of different fields. I've also started and run a number of different local community organizations. I'm experienced on both governance and activist boards. I currently work as a grief counselor and mediator, and recently agreed to be the program manager for one of Guy's projects, which is called Community Climate Connectors. We're still working on the name, but we'll use that as a working title here in the Nanaimo area. And I'm really interested in taking part in WeCan. For me, a major barrier was crossed last year with the heat dome that happened, and I realized I need to be spending my energy on climate, even though the work I do is rewarding and nourishing. I feel like if I'm not working in climate, it just doesn't really actually matter that much. And so I'd really love to bring to the table what I can offer. In the long term, I think I would be interested in starting up a green business project within the WeCan organization. In the immediate term, I think I'm interested in sitting on the membership committee. And thanks so much for a good meeting.
Thanks, Whelm. Next, Eric Minty. Eric, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So my name is Eric, and I come to you today from the traditional territories of the Courtemanche people. This is actually very inspiring work that they do. I invite you to look at what they're doing. And over the past year, it's been my privilege to dedicate my time and energy to the Force of Nature Tri-Cities team, campaigns like active transportation, the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, cycling highway. We're working on in conjunction with Hub, just getting that started, and also the WeCan local government team. As you heard earlier, supporting climate candidates that are seeking election, which now includes myself. I had an announcement last week that I'll be a public announcement that I'm declaring my candidacy for City Council in Port Coquitlam. And about myself in no particular order, engineer, project manager, politician, now entrepreneur, parent, climate champion, and I identify as human. But I want to share quickly just the story of the last couple of days that I think illustrates nicely some of the challenges that we face as WeCan as an organization, but as a species, and underscore the importance of the work that WeCan is doing. So on Thursday morning, I got on my bike, which I wouldn't have done otherwise, except for the fact that last fall, I decided to make a decision to go completely carless in my household, which has highlighted for me just how dependent we are on cars for getting around. I cycled to a local co-working space where I've been working on my startup business. This is sort of a contribution to what I call uncommuting, which is kind of a middle ground alternative to working from home. It provides fantastic networking opportunities and promotes diversity. That's one of the opportunities in front of us. And yesterday, I had the unenviable task of having to a formal conversation, let's call it that, with one of our Strata owners as a representative of Strata Council to explain why we cannot at this time entertain installing heat pumps. But what will it take to move that forward, because it's something that we all want to do. And so just to summarize what that all means to me, and I'm only scratching the surface, I realize here, but the climate action movement, if we call it that, can't rely on individuals to make choices that are beyond their capacity to make without the social and physical infrastructure in order to do that, to support those choices, which is theirs in some places, but it's thin and it's scattered. And likewise, we also can't hope for our grassroots organizations within our community to really succeed without the ability to network and support one another. And that's where I feel like the work that we do at WeCan is so critical to the success of those member organizations and to the success of the climate movement, which is one of the, if not the most important movements that we have in human history. So that's me and what I believe in and what gets me through some of the dark times.
Thanks, Eric. And Denis Hughes from my part of the world. Denis, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Guy. Hi, I'm Denis or Denis, and I'm also in Vancouver Island in Yellow Point, just outside Nanaimo. And my background's in biology. I'm a biologist by trade with a specialty in animal behavior. And I'm now retired. We have a small little hobby farm that we grow pretty much everything we need. My main interest with joining WeCan is to try to find a way to better address the issue that we have with climate change and destruction of the environment. Been a younger or a newer group, I think there's hope we can change the dialogue, because I think most would agree that what has been done in the past hasn't worked. We've lost ground and it's getting worse. And especially when we start as a community to accept the fact that we're told that by 2050, everything will be okay and people just go back to their regular job and feel satisfied with that. I find that upsetting, if not to say shameful, that we have conditioned ourselves to believe that long-term goals are now okay, but direct and immediate actions can just wait for later. So that's kind of why I think I can contribute to this group, because I'm not very patient and I like things to be done faster and sooner. And I think there's a good chance that this might be the group. And we're running out of time, so that's it for me. You can see the rest of my bio and my application. Thank you.
Thanks, Denis. So the voting for candidates is now open. It will remain open until midnight on Tuesday. So you have a chance to look at the candidates and choose the two you want to elect. If we get a third vacancy, then we'll appoint the person who comes third in the running order. And I believe we haven't received any motions from people to address at the AGM, which is, so we're going to move to our wrap up. And one of our wrap up things is in the chat, I want to invite everyone to think about the question, what do we need to give the climate movement more strength in BC? So write your comment in the chat, take a minute to think about it, and then we'll do a waterfall, click share, and we'll see what comes up. We're going to do a breakout group, but alas, the time didn't work out and the technology didn't work out either. So in the waterfall, write your thing in, and then in 10 seconds, I'll say press send, and we'll get a waterfall of responses. What does the climate movement in BC need to be stronger and more successful? And I'm going to, okay, click chat, click press in the chat, and we get, oh my goodness, look at all this. Collaboration, transportation, participation, a better funded weekend, coordinated mass action, meet at the Premier's residence, figure out the game plan to counter the right-wing tactics. We have more climate champions at municipal level, building connections with each other, elect more climate champions, money power, real accountability now, courage, a responsive provincial government. This is fantastic. There we go. So thank you for that. I want to extend a special thanks to Grand Chief Stewart, Philip, and Joan for joining us at the beginning. Thank you so much for that. We're very much appreciative. I want to thank two of our departing, I'm getting emotional. Two of our departing directors, Heather Bates and Fiona Koza, who have worked for us for the past year or so, leaving us to continue other roles in the climate realm. Thank you, Heather and Fiona. I want to thank Sebastian, Sadja, our weekend secretary and network coordinator, who's put in all the work behind the scenes to pull off today's event and everything else. Thank all our member groups. We hope to see you all on Wednesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. for our first Climate Action Provincial Assembly. And then I will formally declare our AGM closed. My goodness. And I can share a little screen to say so. There you go. Thanks, everyone. And if those on the panel want to stay on the line, we can continue doing a little wrap up when the recording is finished. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the climate action lines.